Hey, good afternoon. It is, I don't like this angle either very well, but this is March the 28th in Nashville, Tennessee. Yep, so we've been down here playing with the lawmakers today. We're going to tell you a little bit about what's going on here. Let me see if I can just tag a few people. Oh, I see a few people pop up, I don't get to decide who pops up here. Facebook gets to decide that, and I always just pick like the top, 15, 20, whatever is going on here. So I am down here at the General Assembly with Chad Farley, and haven't really been tracking. Oh, there's Chad, Jennifer. I haven't really been pushing any particular bills. There's a couple things that came up. I'll tell you a little bit about Alabama too. But we just want to keep you all interested in what's going on, right? So at the state level is so important, and I've got to have somebody in every single state watching what's going on. Okay, so we just tagged a few people. End up scrolling through sometime, maybe later today or whatever, and can catch up what's going on. So we are here at the Tennessee General Assembly, stuck over here in the corner on the first floor at the end of the hallway where the meeting rooms are. And we had some individual meetings, and we went to a couple of committee meetings. Hey, Larry, thank you for everything that you do and getting out there and stomping the beat, man, and just continuing to spread the word. So appreciated. So we had a couple of individual meetings. Now, if you follow me, you know I don't tell you who our individual meetings are with, because I'm not going to have them sabotaged, okay? That's just the way it goes. I've already been through that. I have unfortunately had the reality of that experience, and now that all the crazy fake felonies have been flipped and people can't go around anymore and say she's a criminal, they still like to push some narrative like, oh, she's been disciplined so many times, she's suspended, whatever. Okay, whatever. So I did, by the way, I got on X last night on Grok and spent about an hour educating Grok on some issues. We finally got our story straight. So
not the football player.
Yeah.
By the way.
Oh, is there a football player named Grok? No, Grok 3 on X. And so we have to educate AI, by the way. So I was trying to pull up the stuff on the fake felonies, and even the summaries that are out on the internet, even the summary produced by the AOC is incorrect. So I had to send Grok the whole entire opinion and direct them to the page to read, but they finally got it. All right, so before we begin, I do want to go over something else that is like in the news a lot right now, federally, nationally, and it's so important. My goal is for y'all to be educated and not be persuaded and swayed by the nonsense talk, okay? So if you don't go back and you don't look at source documents and you don't think about it logically, then your mind is going to be so twisted, out of shape. So recently, there was, President Trump was deporting the criminals that had gotten into our country from Venezuela, and particularly the Tren de Agua, the Tren de Agua gang members and other people who had been committing criminal acts, and a federal judge ordered that the planes turn around, which is so ridiculous. But anyway, all the narrative news out there is like, this law is like 1786. This is a 1786 law. Okay, so listen to me. Okay, first of all, it is a law, okay? And yes, correct. It was first passed in about 1786. Okay, so all you history buffs out there, what was happening in 1786? Chad, you want to take a stab at it?
Not a chance.
The Revolutionary War against Great Britain, okay? And then after we thought we won the Revolutionary War, we were attacked again in 1812. So in 1786, this law was passed that permits the expulsion of enemies within the United States. And so so we used it back then to get rid of the British, to kick the British out, right? Because they were continuing to hold down forts. I only know because my granddaughter was doing some homeschooling and we did U.S. history. And so we were looking at all the forts that Britain refused to give up even after we won the Revolutionary War. And so it allowed us to kick them out. Put them on boats back then and ship them out, okay? So that law was then updated, slightly modified in 1975. So y'all history buffs want to think about what was happening in 1917, not 1975, sorry. 1917, what was happening in 1917? Oh my gosh, World War I.
I'm not being wrong. I'll just plead the fifth.
And then, of course, World War II, where it was also used because on the news they're like, Trump is implementing a law that hasn't been used since 1945, right? Okay, yeah, so correct. We were kicking the enemies out in 1945, 1975, way back in 1798, okay? So here's the law. So I went and I pulled it off of the current code, and then I went back and I pulled the actual congressional record on this law, all right? So look, for anybody who says like, this law hasn't been used since 1945, this is a 1786 law, here's the deal though, it's still the law. So that was when we had like president number 1, like George Washington, right? We're on president 47, which have been both Republicans, both Democrats, Whigs, Federalists, you name it, right? Nobody's ever revoked this law. It's still the law. So if it's still the law, it's still the law. So, hold on. Okay, hang on here. No more terminating of parental rights. Make it a bill. Yes, you're right, Larry. We need to get rid of termination of parental rights.
While you're talking, I want to.
Okay, so let me tell them this first part, though.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not quite finished. So this law says, whenever there is a declared war between the United States and any foreign government, or any invasion or predatory incursion perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government, and the President makes a public proclamation of the event, all native citizens, denizens, and subjects of hostile nation government being the age of 14 years upward, who shall be within the United States and not actually naturalized, shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. So when it says any foreign nation or government, okay, so it can be the invasion of a foreign national. So the invasion of all these people from Venezuela, etc., it doesn't have to be government sponsored the way this reads. It can be a foreign nation. And I'm sure they did that on purpose, because otherwise the people that are here could just say, well, I'm not sent by the government, right? And so the invasion of a foreign nation. And then it says, the president is authorized in any such event by his proclamation thereof or other public act to direct the conduct to be observed on the part of the United States toward the aliens who become so liable, the manner and degree of restraint to which they shall be subject, and in what cases and upon what security their residence shall be permitted, and to provide for the removal of those who, not being permitted to reside in the United States, refuse or neglect to depart therefrom, to establish any other regulations which are found necessary in the premises for the public safety. So, if y'all have been nuancing and watching the law, there's this app called the CB1 app, okay? And on the CB1 app, they added a new button that says, I'm leaving. Have you seen that?
I'm checking out. Wow.
So there's a new button they can push on the CB1 app that says, I am departing, I'm leaving, okay? Now, I don't know all the details, but so here are the conditions that are met. Number one, there is an invasion. There's a predatory incursion that's being perpetrated against the United States by a foreign nation that is the citizens and residents of a foreign country. The president, President Trump, has made a public proclamation that we have been invaded. That's number two. Number three, the people who are not naturalized citizens, that means they don't have citizenship, they can be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. And it can be the manner and degree decided upon by the President of the United States. So he has the absolute authority to order that all of those illegal aliens, especially those who are perpetrating criminal acts, can be apprehended. And then 5, it says that that the president can provide for the removal of those who, not being permitted to reside in the United States, refuse or neglect to depart. So the CB1 app is giving them an option that they can give notice that they are departing. So all of the criteria on this law right here, if you want to go look it up, 50 U.S.C. Section 21. And you can go back, and it's actually written in, I pulled the 1918 congressional record where it goes through that and basically states all of that. There's actually some other stuff in here under this section that's pretty interesting. I'm not going to go into all of it because I want to talk about some other things, but about all of the things that the president can do over here. So the president can establish certain regulations, et cetera, et cetera. They can say that illegal aliens cannot own firearms, that they can't operate an aircraft or wireless apparatus, which in 1917 they didn't realize that would be phones. They can't use any type of signaling device. They can't use any written or printed.
So, wait a minute. Can they now go back and say, we're not even going to allow phones? I mean, going back this far on a law like this.
This is the 1917 presidential declaration.
That's why I love this lady, y'all. She does nothing but facts. She will find the source. Right.
Yeah, so this is when this proclamation was when Congress declared war in 1917. And so these are all of the things that Congress declared that alien enemies could not do inside the United States. They couldn't cipher, which means take down anything in code, even with pencil and paper, and they could not use invisible writing. They could not be within a half a mile of a state or federal building, arsenal, camp, aircraft station, etc. They were not permitted to write, print, or publish any attack or any threat against the government. They shall not commit or abet any hostile act against the United States or give information, aid, or comfort to the enemy. And then there's some things about them departing, etc. And it says the president shall designate into confinement in such penitentiary, prison, jail, military camp, or other place of detention as may be directed by the president. So in 1917, the Congress ordered the president could put them anywhere he wanted to. He could put them in a jail, detention center, military camp, detention camp, confinement, penitentiary, etc. Okay? So that is what this is all about. Now you can look at it. All right, so it is a valid law. all the criteria have been met for this law to apply. They're given the opportunity to give notice of their departure, and if they don't, president can direct whatever he wants to get rid of them. All right, that's that. Okay, so I want to tell you about a couple things going on here. I've had other things I've had to focus on, and so I haven't been like super nosy about a lot of the laws, not the huge laws like there have been in some years that are super controversial. So I'll tell you a few things though that are happening here, and we did record part of it. So Bud Halsey has introduced a joint resolution for the nuclear family, which talks about the importance of the nuclear family, and designated June as Nuclear Family Month. So that did pass, surprisingly, but it did. And then, however, there was somebody in the audience that when it passed, they started shouting and screaming and walking out. And everybody was just, it was like two people, I think, right? Just two people. But kind of odd looking people, I'll just say that. But that was weird. And then there is a Representative Parkinson had a equal shared parenting bill, and he's a Democrat, so it actually passed the subcommittee, which is really shocking because Democrats can hardly do anything anymore, and he was brave enough to put this out there, and I don't know if they're embarrassed so much or what, but well, I was shocked that it passed, honestly.
It's starting at 50-50.
Well, and the court has to make specific findings
to reduce it.
If they're going to do anything other than 50-50, the court has to make some specific findings. Now, I know they've tried equal shared parenting before in Tennessee, and it did not pass. There's a presumption of shared parenting if the parents agree, and the reason they did that is because before that, there were parents coming in and trying to propose parenting plans that were equal shared parenting, and then the courts would refuse to enter it. It was so crazy. I don't know why they trust judges to do anything. Do you notice that? How they're always talking about, does the court have discretion to do this? Is the court still going to have discretion? And so I don't know why they trust the courts. Obviously, they don't know what goes on in the courtrooms across our 95 counties. So that was Parkinson's. And then Alexander came and did a bill about how the court had to make determinations on the safety of the child first. So I know these two bills are just going to cause a whole lot more legal fees, okay? So soon I want to meet you. Okay, yeah, anybody, yes, of course, I'd love to meet you too. So I don't know. Sometimes they create laws up here, and they're always talking about the courts and the judge's discretion, and the judges can do this. But you know what they don't talk about is like how much money it's going to cost these parents. So when Parkinson was introducing his bill, he said the bill was brought to him by a high school principal? A high school principal who came to him and said, you know what, I have 400 kids in this high school that people entrust me with day in and day out, 8 hours a day, every day, and I can only see my own children every other weekend and 2 weeks in the summer. So that's pretty compelling because that's true, right? And some judge, decided that and created what he could consider as his fatherhood experience. And then, so Mary Littleton, who's the chair of the committee, she had about 3 different bills. One of them was allowing DCS to open adoption records to determine if there was a sibling. It sounds really good, but logistically, I don't even know how you do that. Like, you have to know what records to go ask for. So the purpose is to be able to put siblings together if there's another sibling out there. But you have to know that. You have to know which record to go ask for. So you have to know it before you even get to that point, right? It's like, it's the whole needle in the haystack thing, right? So it's how do you know what record to even go open, I guess. So I guess they're saying, well, if we know there's a sibling, or if a child that comes into custody know they have a sibling, but they don't know who adopted them, I guess. And so, you know, adoption records are sealed not only for the adoptive child, but for the adoptive parents. And so I think that this is going to, now you should be given notice to the adoptive parents that the records can be unsealed and rifled through, right? So, I mean, sometimes they just don't think through these things. Another one that is.
But on the surface, it sounds okay, but there's issues.
Well, it's like, how do you even implement that? I'm going to have to pull that bill up and look at it for next week. But I'm like, I don't even know. So now the privacy rights.
Right.
The privacy rights of the children and the adoptive parents are what is the reason those records are sealed, right? It's not DCS's privacy rights. So I think I'm going to read it very carefully. Okay, so there's another one that's quite troubling. It's called HB 1355, and I had not read it, but I just heard her explanation of it. And she said basically that if you are a putative father, which really means you are a father, right? I mean, there's no such thing as a putative father. That's what we call a legal fiction. You're either biologically related to the child or you're not. Okay, but they're saying that if you didn't provide pre-birth child support, that you are not a putative father. And this is contradiction to case law that says that the goal is to determine true parentage. Like, the goal is to have true parentage. So what happens if somebody gets pregnant, a woman gets pregnant, and she doesn't even tell the guy she's pregnant? And so she doesn't tell him she's pregnant. And then what is pre-birth child support? This bill is quite a disaster, I think. I don't know. What is pre-birth child support? Somebody explain that to me. So let's pull that bill and take a look at it. And then finally was HB 1359, which is about foster child Bill of Rights, basically, right? So I hadn't looked at that one before. I'm gonna look at that one too. So honestly, it sounds okay if you're a foster child. Only the one thing I did not hear them say is that the foster child has an absolute right to tell everybody they want to go home.
Good point.
Right? I didn't hear her mention that at all.
Good point.
A foster child should have an absolute right to tell because it was all of this, like, a foster child shall not be intimidated if they report abuse or all of that, right? But there was nothing about if a foster child wants to go home, that they won't be retaliated against or punished for that. And so I think that needs
There was a, you're going to have to do this. There was a, comment.
I'm going to make a note about that, right to go home.
I can't open that one.
Okay, what is it? What? DC? But DSS doesn't always want siblings together, right? We adopted one and now fighting. Well, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. That's so true. They just make up their own rules as they go along. So if you're in the Nashville area, we are going to have another story breaking tomorrow. I just got news today that Fox 17 is going to have another story out that we filmed a couple weeks ago. So that should be coming out tomorrow. So everybody, please keep your eye open for that as well. All right, so the Foster Child Bill of Rights needs to include the right to request to go home, or the right to request alternative placement. They should have input into where they're placed, or where they shouldn't be placed, right? Like your experience, right?
Yeah. But, yeah.
Okay, so, and then
What
there,
about the conservatorship one?
Yeah, so there's a bill.
weird.
Well, there's a bill about creating a conservatorship sort of oversight task force thing. Honestly, it's probably a pretty good idea because there's been a lot of hanky-panky stuff go on with conservatorships. So it really sounded like it was more of kind of overviewing money management, but the courts really do that anyway because they have to file an annual report, and you know there are things like that that they're supposed to do anyway. So I'm not sure what the
So there
point
was
is.
there was no way to tell how many conservatorships.
Well, so they say, but every year the courts do reports to the administration office of the courts. You can get court reports which tells you like how many divorces, how many adoptions, how many conservatorships. So I think it's true you don't know, like, so that tells you how many are filed. It doesn't necessarily tell you how many there are, right? So like if
You'd have to do the math.
yeah, and they would roll over, right, year after year. So, I mean, they just, yeah, they need some type of, but they're supposed to be an annual report. So if they just get the documentation of the annual report, which again, they're supposed to be confidential, right? Because the people who need a conservator, so you are sacrificing the confidentiality of the conservator and the ward, the person who has a conservator. And that's part of the purpose of a conservatorship. So, but then you all have heard about, you know, Britney Spears and Wendy Williams and kind of the conservatorships from hell and how they've gone wrong. So, and then we saw, as we were walking through the hallway, and I took some clips, I'll probably pop them up on TikTok or something, where Jeremy Faison has a bill that, so there's two things. I think if you're a private insurance company or if you receive any money from the state and you offer gender transition, that you have to offer gender detransition. I didn't hear a single medical person stand up to speak on that. So that was kind of weird, wasn't it?
With all the white coats walking around today, too.
I know, and I don't know what is going, but there's been all kinds of white coats, and not a single medical person stepped up to talk about that, because honestly, I mean, some of the gender detransition stuff is impossible, right? Like, you know, if you have a top surgery, I guess you can have boobs implanted, but you know, some of these bottom surgeries, I don't even know if they're reversible. I mean, honestly, I mean, how do you reverse that? Like, there's no prosthetics for that, right? So, you know, yeah. So I don't even know. I mean, and that's Jeremy Faison's bill. Remember, just a reminder, Jeremy Faison is the one who did the parental rights bill last year that I kept struggling with him. So, I mean, it sounds good. And there was a whole argument about, so is this, if they're not receiving state funds, then it doesn't apply to them, and gender clinics don't receive state funds. But what Jeremy's saying is if you get state funds for anything, like even Vanderbilt University gets state funds. I know they get state funds. They get like $4 million a year from the Department of Children's Services. So if you get any state funds at all and you offer gender surgery, you have to likewise do detransitioning. So I don't know. I mean, I'm shocked that nobody came to talk about it.
They're just saying, look, you screwed up in the first place, you're going to pay to fix it.
Right. I don't know why nobody came to talk on that bill.
When was it put on? That'd be a good idea to look.
I don't know. So I'm going to go back and probably look at that one today. That was in the health committee. So, you know, it's just a matter of, and this is why we need somebody in every state, and I know some of you out there in your states are starting to pay attention. In the meantime, in Alabama, Terry LaPointe and I have been working our little bones off, working with Kenneth Pascal to get the due process bill, and we've been going back and forth about getting due process rights for parents during an investigation. And here's what's interesting is the sheriffs came in and said, well, we want included in here that if DCS gets a report, they have to call us so we can do a criminal investigation. And so at first I was not happy with this, because if a criminal investigation is started, there are certain things that you cannot have during a criminal investigation. I'm assuming everybody can hear okay. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear? So you're not entitled to everything in a criminal investigation. So this bill is intended to give you, very good, thank you. This bill is intended to give you notice of what they're investigating, tell you can have an attorney, allow you to record, basically kind of like Miranda, only it doesn't include the warning that whatever you say can be used against you, which we should have added in there, but we're kind of doing it like just not exactly like Miranda. So the sheriffs came in and said they wanted reports sent to them so they could do a criminal investigation, and they were pretty mad at DHR there. They were pretty mad at them, and so at first I said, I don't know, Kenneth, I'm not excited about that. I'm concerned that that'll cause a problem. And he says, but on the other hand, I would rather have professional criminal investigations on things that are abuse. So we changed the language and we said that if there is a referral that is supported by credible evidence of a reasonable suspicion of criminal conduct, that they have to call the law enforcement in their area within 24 hours.
Credible evidence.
Credible evidence of a reasonable suspicion. So I'm sure they'll still play around with it and still monkey around with it, because that's the one thing you have to learn about laws. If there's a way to twist it, and I was a lawyer for 30 years, so I know it. If you can twist that law around to mean what you want it to mean, or to make it not apply, or to change that, and look at Judge Joseph Addison Woodruff, we told that story a couple times today with a couple meetings we had of how Judge Joseph Addison Woodruff of Williamson County, Tennessee, how he rewrote the law along with Kim Helper, the district attorney who's now deceased, sadly. But
what were in those crackers you ate this morning?
Yeah, well, I'm pissed. I've had it. I'm done. I'm done with these Cracker Jacks, right? So, but everybody in the judicial system twists the law around. The Judge Woodruff did it. Kim Helper did it. Attorneys do it every freaking day. And then the Court of Appeals said I made a false statement because I interpreted a case different from the way the judge did. And I'm like, even Judge Andy Bennett on the panels, like, if this is unethical, like a third of the attorneys in Tennessee have ethical violations, because I hear him talking all the time up here, misinterpreting the law, right? He even said that. And then, of course, he didn't have the guts to file a dissenting opinion, but so anyway, that's just the truth. Got a complaint coming for the way that it was interpreted in my appeal. Yes, about the request for records. Okay, so Chad went through with the Department of Children's Services a substantiation. Okay, they substantiated the allegations.
Before I ever walked into court.
Yeah, well, yes, and without a hearing. And so, and after we beat their socks off pretty much, right? We beat their case. And so then he gets a hearing. So then he applied for a hearing, and he did a discovery request and asked for his entire record, all the file, all the emails, all the communication, all the reports, everything, right? And they didn't produce it. And so
court ordered it.
Court ordered it, and they didn't produce it. And then you had another hearing, right, on the phone? Or
no, that's when the state attorney told me on the phone that there was nothing that
they were dropping it. No, they dropped the case.
They said there's nothing that the court could do to them There was nothing that court or the judge could do to force them to turn over evidence.
After they dismissed it, though.
Well, then they dismissed it.
Okay, so yeah, so they dismissed, they reversed the substantiation and dismissed the case, which, so once they dismissed the case, there was no case pending, and so then they could ignore and deny his request for all those records, which, by the way, that was Alex Rieger? No, Alex, what's his name? The attorney.
Oh, that was Sean Morgan.
Sean Morgan.
Sean Morgan.
Right.
And I remember the reason he did that, because it was his wife who was signing the orders as the DCS attorney in our case.
Right.
Conflict?
Yes, right. And who was the administrative judge in that? Remember?
Amanda Cook.
Excuse me, I'm getting dry. Throat. And that ear is hard to rock. Okay.
Amanda Cook.
Amanda Cook.
And it was for the appeals for a parent, it's your right. So you bring the action, but yet they were able to use their time machine and go back 3 years to pull one word away, to revoke my ability to appeal and get the evidence they used to substantiate us.
Exactly.
How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so then I had my my representative go to them and ask them for the records, since they had taken away that appeal.
State representative.
My state representative. He tried and then was given an email that basically
quoted a statute that said that if the parent had been substantiated, they weren't entitled to the records, but they had unsubstantiated them. Which, by the way, let's back up to April 11th, 2021, where they unsubstantiated it before they substantiated
13. 13 unsubstantiations.
Yeah, so they unsubstantiated it, and then they substantiated the same claims, some of the same claims, and then they unsubstantiated it, right? No, without ever having an administrative hearing.
But it's back to the whole thing of her saying twisting. If they're going to twist language, that's what you got to learn as a layperson, as a parent that's going through this. Dig in and read the words, not the sentences. Read the words.
And never accept their response as the truth. Never accept their response as the truth. Never accept their word as the final word, right? Because if they say, like they said to his state representative, oh, we can't give that to you because he was substantiated, which first of all, they shouldn't even say that because he was requesting them, not you, right? So he has a right of oversight and a right to review. And
That's a good point.
Yeah, so it wasn't even you that was requesting them.
Wow, that's a good point.
That's what I'm saying. Be technical. Be technical because they're stupid and they're ornery and they're mean and they're vicious. So we had about 3 or 4 other meetings today. And, you know, I will say everybody has something to say about CPS. So one particular meeting we had this morning, we had a pretty extensive, we were going to go back though and try to get an appointment for me to talk to him, but we didn't do that. So
yes.
We had a pretty extensive conversation with the legislative aide. I gave her one of my
Y'all, if you haven't seen this,
my new cards, my new warrior cards.
it's upside down again.
Oh, there's my new warrior cards. Okay, so I gave her one of my warrior.
You got to give them the saying though.
Well, I said I look like this to you, but I look like that to all my people. So y'all know what I mean. That's why you call me the gladiator. All right, so yeah, that's an update. I just want to also say, you know, I talk a lot about audits. I say the federal government is never auditing the state and all this money that they're taking. So this is a critical part of what we're trying to do with the Doge. People are looking at us. We're sitting in like this really huge room, and everybody who walks by is like looking at us. Like, what are they doing? You notice that?
Definitely Doge, guys.
Yeah, Doge.
I wasn't a believer, but I am.
So we need to call the audits, and if you just keep an eye on what's going on, we're getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer, okay? So we're heading up April the 6th then I'll be there for 2 weeks, the 6th to the 19th. And during that time, we're doing a rally and stuff. And then also I'm going to be doing some extra work and staying some extra time. We're in as far as what we're trying to do with our legislation, we're in a very awkward position right now. I'm not sure how we're going to handle it, but that's never stopped us before. So we'll figure out that next step. All right. I just want to thank everybody. Was that everything we wanted to talk about?
I think so. It wasn't a super... Today was Ag Day on the Hill.
Yeah, Ag Day. So I do want to say Harvesting Children. I spent last week reading every single page. Now, this is already a book where I knew most of what was in it because most of it were the Tennessee stories written by Peter White. I did go through, though, and read the whole thing because we did have some corrections that needed to be made. And so I got on the phone with Peter last week, and we did about 20 corrections, I think. And we're going to do a republish because it's a publish on demand, print on demand. So it's not like we have a big stock of them already published. And he's getting another publisher. So if you haven't purchased it yet from Amazon, I have a handful of people that have ordered it from Amazon. Just go ahead and hold off until we get it corrected and we can get it. There might even be another place that we can purchase it. So it's called Harvesting Children. And there's combines down there. It's very difficult to see, but there are children standing out. All right, so there was a horse here this morning and a little tiny horse. Did you see the horse?
I did. I saw him shuck corn. And
I saw him outside. You were here early, so tell them what you did.
I had a quick conversation with the governor, shook his hand, the lieutenant governor, Senator Marsha Blackburn. Good to be calling you. Probably shouldn't be putting that personal number on there, but just this morning, came down early this morning, and it was a whole different world. Definitely something I want to explore again some more.
Okay, I'm sorry that your comments, I stopped them, and so I had to scroll to catch up. All right, so I'm just going to double check real quick here. Oh, God bless and protect you, Connie, and your whole team. Thank you, Antonia. Yes, so you know what? Thank you guys, everybody, for your support. Okay, I still get tons of people contacting me all the time. Some of the people who I have been off and on talking to for years now, still struggling through this situation.
Well, even walking into that person you were going to go back to, hearing that they're dealing with something right now, it's
years, right? And there's still a lot of mentality out there about if DCS is involved, you must be a lousy parent. You don't deserve a child. That child doesn't deserve a parent, I guess, doesn't deserve their parent. So, we still have to deal with that some. But
what is your thought? I was going to talk to that legislator about caseworkers. Do you think that would be a bill that...
Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
Look, it would drop the caseloads.
Body cameras
for caseworkers, state employees. We do our state troopers. We do everybody. Our police department. Why not our state workers that are dealing with our families?
Yeah, because they lie. They lie.
That's where it's at. That's the heart of the problem.
On this case in Rutherford County, DCS knows who I'm talking about, so I don't have to mention it here. She did everything they told her to do within just a few months. She has given that paperwork to them over and over and over. So they were coming to look at her home, and I said, look, I'm coming to your house. and I went to her house and I videotaped. They came in. They said, we don't want to be videotaped. And I'm like, well, this is evidence. I'm collecting evidence for her. And this mom went through every single paper that she was supposed to do and completed and gave them a copy of it. And I videotaped them right there doing it. And that CPS worker still continued to lie. So I know in at least one office that we went to, we talked pretty extensively about the audit factor. So, and that person asked if Bill Lee thought about auditing, or Marsha Blackburn thought about auditing, or Andy Ogles, and I'm like, well, nope, I haven't quite got them there
They're
yet.
gonna take away their own money. Wow, you know.
Too many close relationships here, not scrutinizing each other enough.
If you're a family that's been through the hoops of what, you know, DCS brings and makes you do, it's designed for you to fail. It's that simple.
So over the next few weeks, so they're rushing through this session, and we've kind of put it out there before, but there is a huge federal criminal case starting April the 19th, which is Friday, I believe. So
Good Friday.
Good Friday. So it is a huge federal case. I won't be back until the 19th, but the 20th, they'll probably start the jury selection. They'll probably on the 19th just go through some preliminary matters, make sure all the witnesses show up. 1/3 of the Tennessee General Assembly has been subpoenaed to show up, and in part because this case is against Cade Cothran and Glenn Cassida. And Glenn Cassida was a state rep and the Speaker of the House here in Tennessee. And they got busted on this like crazy like scheme to print campaign postcards and created a fake company to do it and got a kickback. But it's not like millions of dollars, which is so weird. Yeah. So anyway, there was a snitch. Okay, there was a snitch that snitched on them, and it's called a confidential informant. And the FBI and the DOJ does not have to give you the information on the confidential informant so long as once they have the snitch information, they can go create a case without the snitch. So if the snitch comes in and say, look, you need to look at their campaign finance, you need to look at this fake company they created, and then the FBI can go out and do that investigation. And as long as they get the materials that they're going to use for the prosecution and they turn those over, they don't have to reveal the confidential informant. And so Cade Cothran and Glenn Cassida have filed motion to disclose the confidential informant, because think about it, there could be a couple things here. Number one, the confidential informant could be somebody just as dirty, right? It could be somebody who is doing another scheme or doing another campaign fraud thing, right? So who you know might have been part of it. We don't even know any of that. So this is kind of a strange.
They want the mole out.
They want the mole, right? And you know, Glenn, I had talked to him a few times. I can't tell you one way or the other any strong feelings about him, but I will tell you that after he left there, the next person that they put in his position was Sam Whitson. Sam Whitson was an older guy who was an older military guy who, do you remember Sam? Yes, you do. When we were here 2 years ago, Sam Whitson, he's a military. Yeah. He's kind of an older guy, and he asked a few questions, but he wasn't really super involved. And so Sam then stepped down, and then there was a huge election contest last year. And there was 3 candidates running for that district. It was Lee Reeves, Michelle Foreman, and who was the third one? Was it Brian Clifford? I'm not sure. But hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars went into that election. Like $900,000 for one little state house seat. And everybody was chattering in Williamson County that the purpose was because they wanted whoever went into office to pass the governor's school voucher bill. And so, and remember, the governor is from Williamson County as well. So it was just huge. It was, and Lee Reeves won, and he was in one of those committees today. Did you see him? Mm-hmm. Okay, so he kind of looks a little shystery, doesn't he?
He's not very, not yet, at least.
He doesn't engage that much, and and his background is like he's not even from Tennessee. I don't know where he's from, and he was like in kind of a small time real estate investment kind of geek, I think. So that is who is put in place. And then the other one who is put in place, so you have three that really touch Williamson County, and one of them is Gino Bolso, who's an attorney who put thousands and thousands of dollars into his own state rep position. And then Jake McCalman is the third one, and Jake McCalman is the son-in-law of Louis Johnson, who's a millionaire out in Williamson County. And there's a whole nother story there. I could go on and on. You don't want to get me started talking, because then we'll have to start talking about Tackle and the whole web app thing of Tackle, where there was millions of dollars collected from investors, and then it evaporated overnight. Nobody knows what happened to the money. That'll come another time. All right, and then finally, again, a lot of this is Tennessee stuff, but I'm just telling you, even though it's Tennessee stuff, and you're like, oh, that sounds really interesting, but I'm not in Tennessee, I'm just going to tell you there's probably just as many creepy, interesting, scandalous things going on in your state, and we want this chatter of the states to be out there so that you can pay attention to every single person that's in your state and local government. That's what you need to have your eyes wide open about. So anyway, Brian Kelsey, who I understand just got pardoned. Did you tell me that was the one that got pardoned?
Yes.
Yeah, so Brian Kelsey, who also was a state rep out of Memphis area, who was a Republican, but he was from kind of, I think, the Germantown area of Memphis. And he was actually also prosecuted on a campaign finance scheme. And here's what I think it is. I may not be absolutely sure. But he had some money in his state house campaign fund, and he ran for senator or for Congress or something. And there was some of his funds that he inappropriately used, that he was being held in his house accounts and Senate accounts at the state level, that he then tried to move over to federal. Okay, I know that sounds like way too simple. I'm not exactly sure that's what it is. But the word is that he has now been pardoned. So you'd have to go back and look at, there's a lot of crazy things that come out of Memphis. So, yeah, so I think that's all. Do you think of anything else that's going on? Chad has met with his representative, had a chat with him, went in and had a chat early this morning with somebody else, and got here really early, crack of dawn.
For me, it was a good day. It was a powerful day.
Yeah, yeah, he got here early. I've had, I'm a little bit lazier these days, but I need to get up and get going early.
I got a Facebook thing from you at 5 something this morning. I sent back, do you ever sleep? It was like 5:30.
Well, yeah. Well, I have to get all the top news that I see. I have to jettison out all the top news before I get busy. So I was working on that. And then I have a cup of coffee, and then I lay back down, and then I walk the dog, and then I take my granddaughter, and then I decide to get dressed. So then I got downtown, and I had like no gas on the car, and I'm like, oh dang. So I had to go find gasoline before I even went any further, because I was afraid I'd get caught in traffic or something with no gas. So I want to thank Chad for really taking on this project. It's always good to be 2 by 2. That's what they talk about in the Bible. It's always good to be out with another person to say the word, share the words. Here I see a couple comments. Hang on here. Oh, Jennifer, proud. Thank you, Jennifer. They're all liars. Love that idea. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm trying to watch my scroll. I can't watch it very well, but I'll go back and scroll through again later. All right, so yeah, we talked to people about what the problem is, the funding and the lying and the turnover and the talked about my old advocates bill and some of those things. So,
and we got a history lesson.
From who? Oh yeah, you got a history lesson. You just got a history lesson on this.
That's valuable. Y'all don't get that.
And the reason I wanted to tell you about that is because of what is going on in the news and to try to make Trump look stupid. You're like, oh, he's using a law that hasn't been used since 1945. Okay, well, it's still the law. If you didn't want it to be the law, it could have been repealed, you know, or he's using a law that passed in 1786 or 89. I'm like, well, yeah, that was the Revolutionary War. We had to get rid of the English. And then they're like, oh, it hasn't been used since 1917. Well, that was World War I. Okay, so y'all just like, look, just when you hear stuff, just make yourself a note and just understand you don't have the full story. Okay, you don't have the full story. So until you get educated on what that full story is, just like be cool. Okay, just like be cool. And if I can get to it, I heard a lot of things I'd like to tell you every day. I haven't done a front porch video for a while. I'm also trying to manage some things in my personal life, like selling a house, buying a house, things like that, that I have to do. So I always have a family to manage because I have a tribe. I have a tribe. I am the chieftain of the tribe, and I have to manage my tribe, okay? So that's all part of it as well. Okay, so I think I'm finally chattered out, and it is a beautiful day out, so we're going to decide whether to hit. We kind of like the Senate Judiciary Committee in the afternoon that starts at 3 is always kind of interesting.
Some heavy hitters in there. I like it.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of what we've done as far as meetings and stuff mostly is House people, and so jump it in there. And these but you know, some of these senators know who we are too. So
I met with one today.
And we sit on the front row, and Chad, I have to wear bright colors from now on. I've discovered, of course, Chad can't see me in a blur.
If they put me on a leash, she might get in trouble.
Yeah, I have a bright yellow sweater. I'll wear that because if I have black and white on today, I just like blend in with the scenery around here. It's like everybody. So, yeah, but that's it. All right. So y'all behave and pay attention. I'll try to. Oh, I think I told you. Yes, I'm educating Grok 3, and I'm going to keep working on that. It's actually kind of fun because, like, I am smarter than Grok 3. I just want you to know when it comes to understanding all the whole criminal situation with me. Even Grok 3 did not believe that the judge changed the law until I finally convinced it. So I am really busy educating
you can't
Grok
argue
3.
with her.
You'll never win. I am so like, I'm arguing with Grok 3. I'm like, you are incorrect. You need to read this paragraph. And so I finally got through it. So my whole goal is that when you type in Connie Reguli, you're going to get the truth, which shows the fake crimes, absolutely fake crimes. Okay, all right, so with love and affection, we're going to check out of here today. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.